Hello everyone, AtariAge here with another commentary video talking a little bit about Scramble on the Atari 7800 as well as my thoughts on the Atari Homebrew scene and some recent news regarding AtariAge. Scramble on the Atari 7800 is an unofficial homebrew port created by Bob DeCrescenzo in 2012. The original game was actually released by Konami back in 1981 in arcades and is the first horizontal shmup as we know it. It pioneered having distinct levels and using auto-scrolling. Vanguard also came out the same year and was made by SNK, but that one came out a few months after this. Scramble would get a sequel soon after called Super Cobra, but I haven't played that one yet so I can't comment too much. This game is pretty much Gradius's grandfather. In fact, Gradius was originally intended to be a sequel to this game. The secondary shot here is pretty reminiscent of the missiles. However, it does have a fuel system as you have to destroy fuel barrels to keep your ship flying. It's really easy compared to later shmups, especially if you use external autofire, even though it's not really all that necessary to clear the game. The only stages that are remotely tough are stages 4 and 6, as you need more careful routing on these stages than elsewhere. Scoring is simple, you kill things, and you also score based on how far you travel. As far as the port goes, it plays great. It does have the loops like it should. The field of view is fine despite this version not being made for vertical monitors. The graphics are faithful to the original. It is a bit too easy on normal because the fuel drains pretty slow, but you can turn it up to hard mode if you want a more faithful experience. Not a lot to say beyond that, but it is worth playing. And now I'm going to jump to the topic of the Atari Homebrew scene and how I started following it. I did not grow up with any Atari consoles like the 2600. I got into Atari because I started collecting for the Atari Lynx over a decade ago. I ended up buying a Lynx and getting plenty of games for it at the time. I was quite impressed with the system and what it was capable of compared to the Game Boy, which came out the same year. This eventually led me to buy my first Atari Homebrew game for the Lynx, which was Cybervirus by Songbird Productions. That's still my only physical homebrew game that I own to this day, and it's a cool first-person shooter. I may do more content on this system in the future. Plenty of great games on that handheld, and it was really good for arcade ports. It could even do 3D games, albeit with obvious limitations. It's not just the Lynx that has a strong homebrew scene, it's all the other Atari consoles as well. 7800, 5200, 2600, even the Jaguar has one, even the Atari 8-bit computer has one as well. These releases are great. They either give us games for these consoles that should have been released back then, like this Scramble port, or they push the hardware to the limits, achieving things that we didn't know were possible. Bentley Bear's Crystal Quest for the 7800 by the same dev as this Scramble port is an example of the latter, looking and performing better than some NES games. Ricky and Vicky is another example of that on the 7800. It used a special mapper chip like a lot of NES games used back in the day. That actually got a Steam release, by the way, which I'll have a link to in the description. Alpine Games on the Lynx almost looks like a GBA game at times, though it's very expensive at this point. Zaku on the Lynx was also very impressive, but as a 2D horizontal shmup, it almost looks like a TurboGrafx game. Extremely impressive, but the game is no longer in production, sadly. The bad news for the homebrew scene is that AtariAge, the biggest Atari fan site on the web, is pulling physical copies of many unofficial ports from their store. For example, that means the cartridges for ports like this and the other ones that Bob DeCrescenzo created for the Atari 7800 will no longer be available for purchase after this month. I understand that this is probably for copyright reasons, but it's still a disappointing bit of news for diehard fans of these consoles. I do not know the specific details as to how this came about, and it's a bit odd that these games are still being sold at the moment if they're worried about legal action, but it is what it is. However, the good news is Bob DeCrescenzo has made his ports available for free download, which I'll have a link to in the description. I'll also have links to the AtariAge announcement and their store. If you like collecting carts for the 7800, you may want to think about buying as many of these as possible while they're still available. And on a side note, I honestly wish AtariAge would consider a digital store to sell the ROMs of the original homebrews that are not being taken down. The Commodore 64 scene has embraced emulation at this point, with quite a few notable homebrew releases being made available on itch.io, so why not? But anyways, that is it for this video. Do any of you have experiences with Atari consoles, whether it be the 2600, the 5200, the 7800, the Lynx, or even the Jaguar? I'm especially wondering if any of you had a 7800, a Lynx, or a Jaguar back in the day, since those weren't very common. Have any of you played homebrew games for any of those Atari systems? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this, as well as one credit clear playthroughs that I do regularly. Thank you for watching and have a great day.